Hey everyone, how are you doing today? I hope you're having a great day. Today we're in my garage. I finally got my Durango fit in here. Really, I just hadn't had a chance to bring her in. But I gotta get some work done to her because in just over a couple weeks from now, I'm gonna be meeting some of my friends that I met in Moab last year in Ouray, and we're gonna run some trails around there, and then we're all gonna head down to Moab again for the Fullsize Invasion 2020. So there's a few things I need to get done to the Durango Ruby Rose. The first being I need to swap out some coilover brackets that I had on the axle. I'll show you shortly what that looks like. I needed to fix the exo cage, specifically the tire carrier. I had some seized bolts in there I had to cut out, and then hopefully we'll be ready to go hit the trails. So yeah, so I have a lot to do this weekend and next weekend. My goal for today is to get the king coilovers removed off the rear, swap out or cut off the old brackets, clean them up, tack in the new brackets and test fit them, and then hopefully I'll have time late tonight to just finish welding those in. But why don't you follow along? I hope you guys enjoy, and then hopefully at the end of this video or maybe the next video we'll get some time watching the Durango out on the trail. Alright, so walking around back, so we'll crawl underneath here. So here's my coilovers. Here's the lower bracket I was talking about. The main thing is it's just a little bit too long. So I have these brackets I got from WFO that I modified to work for my application. So I'm going to be cutting these off and I'm going to be welding these on. I still got to do some modifications to these. And then I'll also be taking these off because I need to adjust these springs. Alright, so the first thing I had to do in order to get the coilovers off was to take off the limiting straps, which are holding the axle up, which prevent it from drooping all the way down and therefore make it really difficult to take the coilovers off. After I got the limiting straps off, I went ahead and just loosened up the bottom bolts holding on the coilovers. This made it a lot easier to just remove these later on, once the axle was moving freely. In order to get access to the upper bolts for the coilovers, I had to go through the inside of the Durango. As you can see here, my hatch doesn't like to stay open, so nothing a set of vice grips won't fix. See here we have the access point for the upper coilover bolt. And once we got that all loosened up, we can finally try to pry out the bolt, which is a lot harder than you would think. For some reason I designed this to where the reservoir has to go over the fuel line. Probably not the smartest thing I ever did. Now that the coilovers are off, I get to the fun part, playing with the plasma cutter and grinder. So we're gonna start with cutting off these brackets and cleaning up the axle. I have to say, having a plasma cutter really makes my life a lot easier. After using the plasma cutter to get off as much of the metal as possible to get as close to the axle as possible, I went ahead and got out my flat disc, got the grinder ready, and went to town just grinding the remaining excess from the brackets. Next thing we did was check the new brackets to make sure they fit. There was some slight modification we had to do as they were bumping into the link brackets. But once we had those all tuned, went ahead and tacked them into place. All right, so I have the new coilover brackets tacked into place. The next step is to take off the coils off of my King coilovers. Once I get those taken off, next thing I'll do is put the shocks back in place, and then I will articulate the axle to make sure it's going to not hit anything. So we ended up raising the coilover brackets about 2 3/4 inches. So hopefully this works out as planned. We'll see. So now that the brackets are tacked in, I went ahead and mocked up the coilovers. As you see here, I also included a spring, and that was mostly to double check for clearance. I just wanted to make sure that the new location of the coilover bracket didn't interfere with any pre-existing bracketry on the axle. All right, pretty much done for the day. I got to the point where we have the coilover brackets tacked in. I put the King coilovers without the coils back on so I can mock it up and see, make sure it flexes correctly, make sure it's not rubbing on anything and getting full articulation. And sure enough, everything looks spot on. There's a few little tweaks I might do to my bump stops, just to lengthen them about 1/4 inch. But besides that, everything looks great. Here, let me give you a look and so you can see what it looks like. So this was one of the areas I was worried about. As you can see here, I was worried about the coil rubbing on the track bar mount, but we have about 1/2 inch of space there at full compression. So tomorrow, what I'll do is I'll finish welding those in, and that'll be done. I'll tweak the bump stops at the same time. So it'll be nice to get it back under its own weight in one weekend. Probably gonna have to paint, so let's say we get that done there in the week. Yeah, so we'll see you guys tomorrow so we can wrap up the rest of this suspension build. Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to day 2 of this project. So while I didn't have the camera out because I got a little excited and started working, I went ahead and cut off the coilover brackets. That way I could actually modify them one last time. So as I told you, these brackets were from a company called WFO. They're really nice brackets, but they weren't gonna work as they came from them for my application. So I ended up having to modify them. In doing that, I lengthened this arm, and then I added this little piece of steel right here. So what I'm gonna do is I went ahead and I cut out a couple of fish plates that I'm going to put on to this bracket, just tying together the 2 pieces of metal where I stitch them together. And that's gonna reinforce that weld joint. That way I shouldn't have any issues. So I'm gonna go ahead and weld this up real quick. Once I'm done welding this on, I should be able to go ahead and tack these back into place one more time onto the axle, test it, double check everything. This is what I like to do. I've made too many mistakes in my time not to double check at this point. And then once everything looks good suspension wise, I'm gonna go ahead and just weld them all the way in, add a little bit of primer so it doesn't rust, and we'll call it good. So check it out. Alright, so after I got the brackets all welded together, I went ahead and just mounted them on the axle again, tacked them into place on each side, and just measured once, twice, 3 times to make sure that they were exactly where we wanted them. Afterwards, we went ahead and put the coilovers back on and tested for full articulation. So everything looked pretty good where we tacked them in, and the last step for today was to fully weld them in. As you can see, you kind of have to be a bit of a contortionist to weld on off-road vehicles. Fortunately, I think I'm relatively flexible. Alright, so I am finally done welding. I'll walk you over here and show you what that kind of looked like. Took a little bit longer than I expected, but I forgot that my welder only runs for like 30 seconds at a time when I'm running at max power, which I had to for my thick differential. So all welded in, as you can see here. Other ones welded in as well. Let me walk you around to the other side so you can see what the other one looks like. I'll show you the back of it as well. I think I'm gonna end it here tonight. All I need to do is start some paint on. While in between welding, I was actually putting the King shocks back together as well. So those are all back together. Once I paint these coilover brackets, I'll be able to assemble everything, and hopefully it should be under its own weight again. So yeah, before we call it quits, take a look at the back of this. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed today's vlog. Like and subscribe, follow along, that we can get notified of future videos. Hopefully the next video is going to be something out wheeling and giving it a test run. So thanks again for following along. I'll talk to y'all later.